What's up, everybody? And we are back again live. This time talking about something that has been in the news lately, and there's so many different perspectives that have been at the surface level. And I wanted to make sure that we were able to dive in with people who, one, know what they're talking about, who, two, are in the fight, and three, have the lived experience. So we're going to dive into a conversation that speaks beyond the surface in the Dave Chappelle special. And this is not all about Dave Chappelle. This is about the things that are surrounded, allowing people to feel comfortable in harming and discriminating with their actions and their words, and why it's so important that we build empathy for one another and go beyond surface conversations. And so I have some very special guests here. Let me go try to find them. But we have to make sure that as we attempt to hold people accountable, that doesn't automatically equal a cancel for you. Just because I hold you accountable does not mean that's an automatic cancel.
At all.
Holding people accountable does not mean we're canceling them. Calling people to the carpet does not mean we're canceling them. And so is somebody saying something? Your YouTube or lecture is playing all over your video. I'm not sure what that means. Is my sound messed up? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good to be in community.
Yes, good to be here. Welcome. So want to jump right in, waiting for one other panelist, but wanted to level set, right? And the first thing I wanted to level set, because I see all over social media people saying, so sorry, but unfortunately we're not canceling Dave Chappelle. And I said, well, I don't recall anybody saying cancel Dave Chappelle.
Right.
I don't recall anybody asking for Dave Chappelle to be canceled. He is one of the GOATs of the industry who has created pathways for many people. And quite frankly, he is hilarious. Holding him accountable for his action, well, to me, he's hilarious. Holding in my I
went home.
Holding him accountable for his actions is a whole nother thing. Not only him, but the people that contribute to letting messages like that live in spaces. Because people have said, well, if you don't like it, turn it off. It's impossible to turn it off when the subject matter is all over social media,
right,
all over Facebook, all over Instagram. And so I have here with me some amazing folks who do amazing things in their own way in communities across the country. And if you could just take a few moments to introduce yourself before we dive in. And I'm trying to give Sampson some time to join in. But let us start with you, Hope.
Hey, everybody. It is I, Hope Giselle. And I am a social activist, social commentator, trans activist, author, all of the things. Organizer for a bunch of different communities because I am Black, trans, and a woman. And I believe in standing for all of those communities simultaneously. None of those struggles, are held above the other. And the work that I do encompasses all of those communities and subsets of my identity at one time. I don't pit one against the other at any point in time. And I think that that's what a large part of this conversation is going to delve into, is that intersectionality of being Black and what that stands for. So, hey.
Hey, thank you so much. Mr. David Johns.
Happy to follow suit, and also want to celebrate that Hope's newest book is available for purchase. You should get it.
Woo.
Get your do all
Come
of the
on,
things.
Hope.
Listen,
Come on, Hope.
get
yes.
There we go.
What is
you
it
should
called?
It is called Until I Met Black Men.
And if you're not following Hope, you should, because she shares excerpts amongst the many other things that she does. For those who don't know, I'm David Johns, and I have the pleasure of leading the National Black Justice Coalition. And we were engaged in this discussion and calling for Netflix in particular as the platform that is carrying the special, right? Which for me, to your point, Ben, makes it difficult to not simply not go to the show, because it is the largest distributor of content around the world. We were inviting them in to have a conversation about where and how they've drawn the line, or the extent to which they're ignoring drawing the line between hate speech and free speech. And this matters to us because NBJC exists to support and ensure that people always remember that we exist, Black, queer, trans, non-binary folks. And I often find that in these conversations that are Black and white, that assume that all Black people are cis and het, which we've never been, and that all white people, conversely, are queer, which erase us, which is my core problem, contribute to the kind of violence that we experience. And it makes it difficult for us to do the public policy work of passing legislation like the Equality Act, which would address some of the challenges that we face with regard to discrimination.
Thank you. And Sampson, we're just doing self-introductions.
Oh, hey, y'all. Like me and Hope, we got our boobs out. Hey.
Y'all should have let me know. I can address appropriately.
I mean,
right.
You can still go change now. So, well, first of all, hello. It's a true blessing to be here on this panel with just folks I think are absolutely fabulous. And congratulations, both Ben and Hope, on your books. And David on continuing to do great work at the National Black Justice Coalition. I said that this time without tongue twisting over here. And I like to celebrate myself. I also have a new film out on Amazon Prime called Love the One You're With. So, you know, I want y'all on the panel, and for the folks watching, go check it out. So quickly about me, I am Sampson McCormick. I have been a very openly gay Black stand-up comedian for 20 years. And, you know, I've watched...
At 5?
4. No, well, Black don't crack, you know. Yeah, so it's really just been about watching the industry change and also watching the world change while navigating a career in this business, you know, because comedy is all about examining the public consciousness and being able to shift how you have conversations on stage. At the same time, I also do believe that it's about pushing the envelope when need be. So it's a delicate balance. But that's a little bit about me. There's so much, but I'll be modest this evening.
No need to be modest, because we want to dive in and answer people's questions to bring some type of civility to the discussion. We always jump into these discussions and we are polarized and we shout at each other, and we never come to some type of equitable path forward where we are not demeaning other, right? And so there are a lot of things. I mean, courses could probably, you know, use this special as a case study. I mean, so much happened and people go right to the surface stuff. But before I even get there, for those who don't know, I am Benjamin Carlton, actor, activist, and social entrepreneur. And along with Hope, I do have a book that has been released today on National Coming Out Day. I'm Black, I'm a minister, and I'm gay. 7 reasons why living in your truth won't send you to hell. And it talks about the intersectionality. I didn't came up with another sexuality. Race, religion, and sexuality. And it is the kickoff of a series of conversations and a tour that I'm on called Stand for Love, Elevating the Black Queer Experience. And my kickoff was in Miami a couple of days ago. LA is coming up. I'd like to see all of you there. But the reason why I wanted to jump into these conversations, so I co-founded Be Me Community, the largest social entrepreneurship network in the country for Black people. The premise of the work that we do is all stemmed and based in narrative, the impacts of narrative and what that does for our lives. And I'm going to geek out for 2 seconds and then jump right back into the heart of the conversation. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman received an award, a Nobel Prize award in economics, because he proved that narratives dictate our spending power and spending decisions. And narrative dictates our actions. And so when people say things like, the jokes didn't mean much, they're not that harmful, it's light, it's funny, while some of that may be true, the other end of narrative can be harm. The other end of narrative can perpetuate the ills that causes people to stand strong in their discriminations. I'll give just a light example. I have never, as a child that I've known of, met a transgender person. But what I knew about transgender people was based on people's jokes and comedy. The first and only thing I would know is check Adam's apples, check Adam's apples. Check. That was the joke. You go on a date, check Adam. It was a joke, harmless, but I began to view people that I've never experienced based on narrative that I heard. And it's so important that we understand and follow the end of our narrative. And so the first thing that a question I want to pose to the floor, now that we've laid that premise, for the people that just joined, I want to ask this question. Does holding people accountable automatically cancel them?
I mean, absolutely not. I think that two things can be true at one time. You can be held accountable while also, still occupying space, right? I'm not asking you to necessarily leave the table. I'm just asking you to make sure that you clean up after yourself before the next course comes out. And I think that a lot of people fail to realize that that is what's being asked of a lot of Black cishet men in entertainment, right? Now, in some cases, we are saying do away with, certain people because at this point you've done too much harm. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in this particular case, to be very specific, right, to what we're talking about tonight, no one in any of the videos or any of the posts that I have seen that have been largely spread have said, I want him canceled, right? Not even in the ask by the NBJC to have the video pulled. That was not saying cancel Dave Chappelle, the comedian. That was saying remove this harmful rhetoric from a platform where you are, one, also promoting a litany of shows that have queer characters that have affirmed people in the past, right? There are so many shows and there's so much media on Netflix that queer people go to and have found solace in, right? We have all of these different nuanced places where people from all races, right, that y'all have curated that way, go to see themselves on television. And it's simultaneously now what they're seeing as the number one watched thing is Dave Chappelle's The Closer. And those things can be harmful because when you go into that as a queer person who feels like this is a safe space for you, and 5 minutes in, you wait, hold up. What? Whoa, right? This is a problem because now you're inflicting this harm for the same group of people that you've gone out of your way to affirm for so many years. And so what it looks like, Netflix is doing is exactly what other companies do during Pride Month, which is we're going to reel you in, pull all your dollars in, use y'all up for what you're worth. And then the second that we get a chance to do something bigger, better, or that makes us more money, your feelings, your emotions, and all of the other things that we've done in the past no longer matter because your season is up. And I think that a lot of folks are missing that when trying to hold someone accountable, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do away with all of their things. It just means that I need you to understand why this particular thing that you did doesn't work and should not be allowed to go on as if it's okay.
Yeah, and as it relates to that, 3 points that I'd like to add, first by saying thank you to Hope for laying that foundation. One, again, very much connected to our ask was a direct question to Netflix, right? And it was an invitation to continue doing exactly what we're doing now, which is to have the conversation. So that's one part of this, and that has been missed almost completely in a lot of the public commentary. The second is that I watched this special twice, and it was challenging for me too, and I didn't find much of it funny. And I also hold space for the fact that there are other people that found parts of it funny. The challenging part about how all this is playing out is that at the very end of the special, Dave Chappelle extends an invitation for additional conversation. And so here I go, let's accept it. Let's have that discussion. And for me, the irony of people who are protecting Dave Chappelle's freedom of speech and essentially saying, I found it funny. So no one can say that they didn't find it funny. No one can be critical of any parts of the jokes, not only in this special, but the two previous specials where this is not a new preoccupation with some of these things that are vexing him, right? That I imagine he's doing the work that Sampson talked about in surveying where people are and thinking about how to move us forward. And all of this matters to me because the thread through what Dave Chappelle does so often is talking about the desire for all Black people to be free. And I'm simply asking, like, how much of that is actually true, right? Like, if this is about acknowledging that your brand of comedy is one that, and it's worked well for you, right? To be clear, the man is a multimillionaire, right? Has his own comedy club. I want to be clear, in us extending the invitation, we were not under the guise or assumption that we would stop him from doing that which he does, or people from supporting him. But we should be able to have a conversation both with him, would love to do it in public or private, as I've continued to say if you are attempting rather to bring more of us along, can we have a conversation about some of the harm that's being done and ways that you can possibly shift? And he could also say, hey, hell no, I'm not interested in that. And that would be most helpful for me in knowing how to move forward, right? I simply want us all to be able to have conversations where, as Hope said, multiple things can be true at the same time. And all of us who purport to care about Black folks engage not only in the conversation, but the actions thereafter with the goal of making space for all of us.
Absolutely. Sampson?
Oh, well, this is good. So I really respect everything that's said here on the panel. But I approach this in many different ways. Of course, as a comedian myself, you know, anybody who's been to one of my shows or seen videos, you know, when I do comedy, it's not with any intent to harm. It's most of it is pretty clean, you know, especially considering I'm a gay comedian, and you know, gay folks, we talk about everything. Queer folks, trans folks, we put it all out there. At the same time, something that I have seen over the years with comedy is people seem to now look at comedy to, like, they go into comedy looking for things to be upset about. So like, this is something that I've seen even with me during a period of time when I was in San Francisco. We had folks who would come out to the shows and they would come in there with notepads to write down everything that we were saying. That, like, they would come in like basically to find a reason to be upset. Like, I used to have a joke about what it would be like if gay men could get pregnant. And I had I'm going to try not to mess this up, a female to male white trans person try to back me up in a corner after the show to tell me that that was insulting to him. And I was like, it's not insulting to you because this is what my perspective is on my experience. And so I think that with comedy, what a lot of people are doing now is they're looking at comedy and they're taking away kind of the freedom of what comedy is. Like, comedy is supposed to push the boundaries. That's just my opinion. I do believe that, well, I've spent a lot of time with Dave Chappelle, and, you know, I can tell you he's not transphobic or homophobic. In fact, he used to have Daphne, who was up in San Francisco, used to open for him all the time, and I knew her. And I don't know. I think people have just lost the ability to be able to have conversations, like, in a way where they can, like, respect something that somebody else says and still understand that it doesn't affect you. Like, it's layered, it's complex, but that's just my opinion on it. Like, I believe somebody else can have an opinion. You don't have to agree. You don't have to watch the comedy special. Look at comedians who are talking about what you want to talk about. There's plenty of queer comedians out here who need that attention, who would benefit from that attention. So if you don't like what he's saying, come look at some folks who are talking about what you want to talk about. They'll never listen to what the LGBTQ community is saying because we don't put money behind our artists and things that we want to see.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, and thank you for everybody's commentary. And I want to jump into the next question, but respond to something that you said. And I really appreciate having the civil conversation. And even when we don't agree, we are all amazing folks who know how to do this. What I will say is, you say that Dave is not transphobic, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes we can be transphobic, we can be homophobic, we can have phobias and not even know it, that our actions are contributing to that. right? You don't have to intentionally be racist in order to perpetuate a racist system, right? Or you could fund it, just like Chick-fil-A's funding anti-LGBTQ stuff, or you know, you're supporting certain politicians.
And we still be sneaking eating that chicken
Child, the chicken.
Go ahead.
Anyway, but so
see again,
so
not a monolith, because I'll go to Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
I don't want.
But just because you like, as I was saying, you do not have to be racist in order to perpetuate a racist system, but you are contributing to it. And so though he, you know, out of his mouth, I'm a feminist, out of his mouth, I'm not transphobic, when your actions speak against the very thing you think you're standing up for, you're contradicting yourself with action versus your stance. And so they contradict because the end of your rhetoric leads to harm. And my question is, and I want to ask for all the people who've been asking this question, what did he do wrong? What did he do wrong? And hear perspectives on what you think actually went wrong, is to understand that there are a million other things in the world to laugh about. I mean, he could talk about a fat dog crossing the street and some people would be hollering, laughing. It's funny. He's just a funny guy to me. We've established that at the start. He's really funny to me. So why intentionally over the years? Because he doesn't seem to understand what punching down means. You represent blackness in America, but yet your actions discriminate against people who even are discriminated worse than you are. So why over the years continue? If this is the feedback that you've gotten for years and years and years and years, what is your intent with continuing on with the same jokes, right? There's something behind it. I don't know what it is, but I'm just asking and would love to know, why do you continue on when there's 10 billion other things in the world to joke about? Why do you continue on in this issue? What is it about? But I want to know, and if we could clear up for the people, what did he actually do wrong? I know some people saw it and they're like, he's done nothing wrong. It was funny, but for those with lived experience, for those who've been on the other end of vitriol from stages across the world, me being one of them, and me used to being a contributor, what did he actually do wrong? Anybody?
Yeah, if I want to,
and you can reframe anything that I asked.
I want to do that. I want to shift
Yes.
the premise and celebrate something Sampson said, which is that my words, not his. Comedy is an art form, and I want to acknowledge a name that different comedians engaged in that practice in different ways. And so, to the extent that what I understand about Dave Chappelle's brand of comedy is that it is designed to make people squirm and to think critically and to engage in conversations. I want to name that he did that right. We are now having this conversation. There have been hundreds of outlets that have written about it. I don't know how much of this has contributed to the ratings going up, right? Like, so I want to name in a world where he has been able to amass an extreme amount of wealth, that I also wonder how that impacts the way that he sees our experiences as Black people, in particular, those of us who would never have access to not only that kind of wealth, but the privilege that it provides, right? And so he did that right. What I will name again, because it's most important to me and how NBJC entered this conversation, is that Netflix was foul. And again, as Hope said, platforming content that was designed to do what it feels like for me, Dave Chappelle is purporting to want to do, but it's falling short of, right? And for me, there's a distinction because I imagine that the goals are different. And Dave Chappelle is a Black man who purports to care about Black folk, and Netflix is not. But for Netflix as a platform to produce the documentary Disclosure, which does what you said, Ben, right? Help break down that most of us remember watching Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Couldn't tell you a whole lot about the movie, but I remember him plunging his mouth at the end of the movie. And it makes clear that like that was transphobia, which was embedded in the film that wasn't transphobic. Maybe the intent wasn't to be transphobic, but it shared some of these messages. Same thing around Sex in the City and Samantha talking about, men in dresses outside, or Law and Order SVU, right? Like the situations that we sometimes find ourselves in are a result of these narratives, these myths that are promulgated by content. And so again, for me, what Netflix has not done, still to this moment, while there are conversations about them firing folks for wanting to have these conversations and folks quitting because they don't feel safe They are saying, I have been harmed. This isn't hypothetical, right? But there are employees who are saying, I have been harmed. Netflix has still not said, here's a line. What they have said is we will protect Dave Chappelle and his brand of comedy as we do. What they have said is we'll continue to profit from all of this divisive conversation, including if it leads to people getting death threats for wanting to have conversations. They have not said, here are the things we value, right? We value our employees. We value the diversity that allows us to get the kind of content that introduced many of us to Squid Games. We value actually holding space for us to be better together as a global community. They have done all of that horribly wrong.
So let me say this.
It was
For
the
people,
me.
because my thing is for people to ask the question, what did Dave do wrong? I feel like, you know, for my UK brothers, sisters, and others, are you daft? Because even if you don't believe that it was something that you should be completely offended by, you know what he said. You understand the context behind how some people might feel about those things. Regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree, you know exactly what he might have done wrong, right? And this idea that people are acting like there's just no legitimacy to the hurt and the pain that people feel is straight up gaslighting, right? It is the same thing that white folk do when they say things that are overtly racist, but then turn around and ask us to educate me. How can I be better at continuing to oppress you while pretending to be oblivious about the oppression that I'm causing? What do you mean, right? To get on that platform and verbally say, I am a TERF, after saying that I do not, dislike, trans people, and saying that I am not transphobic, are oxymoronic. You cannot say I am not transphobic, but then in another breath, shortly after, say I am a TERF. And also double down and affirm TERF women's idea that trans women make a mockery of womanhood and that trans women are creating puppetry by perpetrating what that is. At the end of the day, if I'm a mockery of womanhood, if I am all of these things that you say that I am, right? Once you know about my transness, because I'm not any of those things. As long as we're not talking about transness, if I get on my platform, which I've done purposely in the past, when I make videos talking about blackness, they're here for it. When I'm on my platform talking about black love, they're here for it. When I'm on my platform standing up for black men and black women and talking about all of the things and black children, they're here for it. When I made a video dragging that white man for the people who he went over there and did all the things and those people drug him out of his house, they were here for it because I didn't talk about being trans. And so at that point, I was just another black woman standing up for my blackness. But the second that I say, as a black woman who happens to be trans, I would like for these things to also be a part of the conversation. Now I'm a mockery. Now I'm stupid. Now I'm uneducated. Now I'm ugly. Now you can see the man all up and through my face. But you just watched a 30-minute video of me and gave me all of my roses and had nothing to say about those things because you didn't know. Which goes to show that the transphobia is not something that just sits on your shoulders. It's something that you have to be introduced to in order for you to feel like you have to feel some type of way about it in most cases. And what Dave Chappelle did with this special is introduce transphobia into the scene, mask it in this bullshit acceptance, mask it in this bullshit understanding, and then tie it up in a bow and say, but I don't have no problem with y'all. It doesn't work that way. You can't package it up and then expect us not to smell the shit that's in the box. Just because it's in a pretty box does not mean that it's not still going to be funky when I open it. And that is the problem that I'm having with a lot of people. And Sampson, something that you said really struck a chord with me because it's like, oh, this doesn't affect you, but it does. It affects me directly. The reason why I don't care and I don't give a shit about Daphne's opinion, the reason why I don't care and give a shit about that other young woman's opinion that he met in that bar that night is because those are two white trans women. Those are white girls that don't run into Dave Chappelle's on a regular basis. Those are two white girls that don't live in the hoods of Miami, Brooklyn, Chicago, Atlanta. Those women don't run into the men that I run into. Those women don't clutch their pearls when they're walking down the street and they see a couple of thugs outside the corner store. Those women don't run into black men in black spaces the way that I do. Those women don't have to worry about whether or not it's safe to go out with their homegirls who want to go to a cisgender heterosexual club while looking the way that I do, but having to navigate the fact that because I'm attractive, I can't have a good night that night the way that my homegirls are going to be able to have, because I got to worry about disclosing every single time a guy wants to buy me a drink. And so the jokes that Dave Chappelle made come back full circle because they affirm to those men that find me attractive. They affirm to those men that I run in contact with that do find out that I am transgender, that it is okay to then inflict violence on me, to then make fun of me at the very least, to then tell other people that I am unworthy of the attention, the respect, and the love that all humans are, deserving of. And then to belittle me as a human being. And last point being, to then turn around and say that my body, my very existence is a vegan expression, to say that it is something that is just, I don't give a shit if it's fact, fiction, or otherwise. There are certain things that you don't disinvalidate, or there are certain things that you don't invalidate for the sake of getting a couple of laughs. We would not laugh if a white person whose truth was that black people are tertiary citizens and deserve to be put black in slavery. We wouldn't laugh at that, whether it was their truth or not. We would not allow a white person's Netflix special to stay up because other white people thought that it was funny. And they've been taught that white supremacy is the will and the way. We would not allow that. So why is it okay for somebody to come in, dispel the idea of transgender women, not only us, but the people that love us, put these men back into boxes where all of these DL men who are on the cusp of being like, you know what, I can do this, right? Because y'all are thinking real linear. It's not just about us. It's about the culture that surrounds us as a whole. A lot of these men who are like, oh, I'm just about to come out. They watched this special started trending, and now guess what? Another girl has to deal with this idea of being somebody's sneak freak because he was just about to come out, and then this doubled down on the reasons why he shouldn't. Another girl is probably going to end up dead because this doubled down on the reasons why he should be afraid to show his love and affection for her publicly. So when people are sitting back saying, oh, this doesn't affect you, it's just jokes, it's just da-da-da-da-da-da, tell that to the black transgender women that have been killed at the hands of men who's had their phobias and who's had their hatred affirmed by people who make jokes. And then come back to me.
I don't even know what to say other than allow that to sit. A lot of the back and forth that I have been going, on social media is people asserting how people of the trans experience should feel. And it's like, but you aren't trans. And you're telling trans people how to feel. Yes, I'm a gay man, but I don't walk outside every day afraid for my life. I don't have to walk about life in clubs fearing and to your point, having to disclose at every conversation. I don't have to do that. Now, I do fear for my life when it comes to dealing with police, but that is a whole nother black experience that we all experience as black people. And the question, I'm sorry, Sampson, did you have a response before I move on to the next question?
Oh, well, of course, my biggest thing is when I come into these conversations, I come to hear. And so I definitely respect everything that Hope just shared. It's very important. And I'm also very closely familiar with the trans experience because I've dated, some trans folks before. So, when it comes down to this term that we call empathy, I definitely understand that and would not, I don't have anything to say back to that because Hope is absolutely correct. My biggest thing and the reason why I'm here is to encourage folks to show up for the conversation a little bit differently when it comes down to how comedians do our job, because what we do is, I think comedy is one of the hardest professions to be in, and so I think that it does create a space where we can have these conversations. But I think just how we're willing to show up for the conversations is what's really important.
Well, that leads me to my next question that I'd love for you to kick off. And it should comedy have limits, right? When the end result of that comedy can lead to great harm, right? Should we just brush it off because it's comedy? I posted and said, well, I guess all you have to do is wrap discrimination up in a little bit of empathy and it's okay. Because there were some truths spoken by Dave Chappelle. Absolute truths concerning racism, absolute truths concerning the Jewish community, absolute truths. And you got to be careful there. They'll shut this live down. And the reason why my website and my tour is all about Black queerness, and my website is Black Love Wins, because we had a major campaign, Love Wins, marriage equality all across the country, and they still left Black people out of that campaign. And so, I mean, he did speak a lot of truths, right? But what happened during the show live, and it made me remember this when John McCain was out campaigning with Sarah Palin, and Sarah Palin was out talking about President Obama palling around with terrorists, and he's a Muslim and he's that. And John McCain is on a stop, and a lady says, you know, Barack Obama's a Muslim. And John McCain's like, no, that's not true. Well, John McCain, you can't stand up here and say that's not true and don't treat the president that way, but you have a vice presidential candidate out here saying the opposite. And so during the comedy special, when he talked about the bathroom bill in North Carolina, some members of the audience said, woo, you're right. Yeah, everybody be in the right bathrooms. He said, no, let's not go there. You can't say, no, that's not go there when the conversation you just had supports those people saying, I mean, live right there it happened. Because the hope is that at the end of this thing, people will leave here with some more empathy. But right there live in the middle of the darn show, he mentioned the bathroom bill and people being for it, and the audience went in. It's like, well, wait a minute, this is anti your end goal. So should comedy have limits? You as a comedian, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I came here to be honest. I think
you should love you for your honesty. You know I love you.
Yeah, you know that's what I do. I don't think it should have limits. I think if it's funny, you should be able to say it. That's just me. I'm from Southeast DC, and I grew up. If you was fat, if you was ugly, if your mama was missing, if y'all didn't know what your daddy was, or any of that stuff, people made fun out of you, and that taught you how to accept who you were. And hopefully you learn how to fight back and say some shit back. And that's where I come from. So that's why my view on comedy is what it is. At the same time, I don't think you need to be an asshole, which I don't think Dave was trying to be an asshole. What I think was he did what many great comedians do, which is to introduce a very important conversation. People might be upset with him about it now, but I do think in maybe 5 or 10 years, people will appreciate how he presented it, because many people from our community, this is the first time that they've been called to mainstream platforms to share what their experiences are, which I think is great. And I think, again, what it comes down to is how are we showing up for the conversation? I don't think we should be showing up to the conversation angry. That's not something that has ever worked for me. You know, I remember when I first started comedy, and this is an example, you know, I would do a lot of the Def Jam clubs, and I had like the, you know, Black audiences, they come up in there with that type of attitude, and then, you know, you standing up there talking about you gay. They used to throw bottles at me on stage. They used to throw chicken bones at me on stage. And what I had to learn how to do is learn how to understand that these are my folks, and that's just the way that they responded to that type of stuff. And I worked so hard on my craft and worked as hard as I could, knowing how to have that conversation with our folks where I was as a comedian, that it got to a point where they were selling out my shows. They were walking me out to the car to make sure nobody did anything to me. And I think that that's what it's about. It's about being able to understand how we are able to relate to one another. And that's just my opinion. And I think comedy is a great platform to be able to build those type of bridges.
Thank you. Any thoughts, Hope?
Why is that something that we have to learn to accept? What it breeds to me is, as a Black woman, we all got to go through the struggle with these men, and we got to put up with their stuff in order to, like, we got to, because they diamonds in the rough, and we just got to go through it. Like, you know, like, every Black man gonna drag you, and, like, sis, you just got to stick with him until he gets it together. That's what it's giving me. You should not have had to endure and prove yourself to be treated humanely. Now, proving yourself as a comedian, being booed off the stage, absolutely. Absolutely. Prove your shit. Prove your chops. They laugh, they don't laugh, they sit their arms folded, but throwing chicken bones and having people from the audience have to get your craft to walk, I'll be damned. And I think that is what people are missing here. At some point, we this shit ain't funny. And that is, and that's the thing that I think we're disconnecting, because as queer people, we've been taught for so long that we need to be, once again, the correlation. Be a good little nigger.
Yeah.
Be a good little nigger, and we'll let you sit at the kiddie table next to the table that we're building. Be a good little gay. Be a good little tranny, be a good little fag, and we'll let you sit next to the kiddie table on a blanket on the floor, and we might throw you a cushion. But we don't want to hear you over there smacking. Because the second we recognize your presence, it's over for you, and you're uninvited from the table. I don't think that was okay, and I don't think that you should have had to prove that you were one of the good gays, that you were one of the funny gays, in order for them to treat you humanely. Now, your job is your job. You signed up for it. You know that sometimes they're going to laugh, sometimes they're not going to laugh, and that you have things that you got to prove extra because you are queer in spaces that are used to heterosexual comedy. But the idea that we are supposed to grin and bear and smile and laugh and wave at the things that are traumatic for us is null and void. And what a lot of people have an issue with is not the fact that queer people have an issue with the jokes. It's the fact that we have the audacity to say that we have a problem with the jokes. It is the fact that for so long, it was okay to do this. It was okay to be like, he got a little sugar. It was okay to make those jokes, and nobody felt like you were going to snap back. You weren't supposed to say those things. And now the kids are like, oh, no, ma'am.
Let's have.
Absolutely not.
I love
and now people are in their feelings.
Generation Z ain't having it.
The kids are not having it, and the people are not feeling it. It's not about sensitivity. It's about the fact that y'all realize that the days of yesteryear, where y'all were able to say what you wanted to say about the girls and the boys and all of the things, and get away with it and walk away, and everybody walks away unscathed except the girls and the boys, are over. And y'all don't like it. Black people have often used the Black queer community as a doormat to wipe off their trauma, because they don't have anybody else to punch down on. And now the kids are saying, absolutely not, I will not, you will not, we shan't. And the white people that want our money, unfortunately, right, are using us to make an example out of a lot of these people. But at some point, it was gonna have to happen. At some point, Harriet had to shoot a couple of motherfuckers because they weren't on board. And at this point, that is what is going on. DaBaby got shot. Kevin Hart got shot. Dave Chappelle, don't think that just because they're not going to take your special off, that you're not going to get shot. He's built something for himself where it's going to be a little bit harder. I hate to use City Girls as a reference, but there's a line in one of JT's songs where she's like, I'm rich, they can't kick me off the plane no more because I got a private jet now. And I think that Dave is sitting on this idea that, like, oh, I done set myself up. They can't kick me off the plane, I got my own. They can't kick me out the club, I got my own. They can't kick me off a tour because I have my own spaces to go to. But at some point, you're going to have to be in spaces with all of these other people. And it's not going to be safe for you to just say what you want to say and have no repercussion. Because my thing is even if Netflix doesn't want to pull you, don't get it twisted. The girls are that same thing that he was talking about on the special, where sometimes you got to get off the bus and walk. The girls are to the point where we'll boycott Netflix. None of the rest of your shows that make you money won't make you anything. We'll stop watching. And that we are no longer this group of people that is willing to sacrifice ourselves for the sake of a good TV show. Bitch, we'll all be over there on Amazon Prime watching that mediocre ass shit and waiting for y'all to get it together. because that's just how it has to be. Y'all have to understand that there are consequences, and for every action there is a reaction. What a lot of people miss, what that happened within the first couple of minutes of the show, was that Dave Chappelle said that he was physically and sexually abused, but then had the nerve to say, but don't cry for me, right, because I enjoyed it. when don't cry for me because I enjoyed it. And nobody is thinking about those things. These are the same things that happened with the R. Kelly trials. He was all of these men have had some sort of run-in with the community that everybody just kind of sort of grazes past until they want to give them a pass for some bullshit. That's always the last and the final straw, where people are like, but I feel bad because he was also raped by his sister. And I'm sure that when the Infinity Stone War finally comes to a head, somebody is finally then gonna be like, well, y'all remember he said he was touched? Like, that might be a thing that, you know, no, don't use that then. Let's talk about that now, because that's something that he made funny, but that shit ain't funny neither. It's not, like, none of those things are truly funny. And I think that while comedy should not have a limit, comedy should definitely have boundaries. Everything has to have boundaries. We have boundaries once again, and I'm going to keep saying it. If we would not allow a white comedian to get up there for an hour straight and talk shit from their truth and their perspective about the Black experience, knowing the harm that it does to us, then why is it okay for cishet comedians to cause, you know, to set up shop and talk about these things? Kim Kardashian got on SNL the other night and made fun of Caitlyn without being transphobic. It can be done. Let's not act like it can't be done. The thing about it is that Black people don't want to have to do it because they don't like the idea of doing the work to make other people feel less marginalized, because a lot of Black people feel as though queer people have this privilege that we don't have as Black queer people, and that's what they forget.
Well, I agree. You know, and it's not that I don't agree with anything that you're saying, Hope, and I think, you know, I think you're brilliant. At the same time, I do look at things a lot differently. I look at things a lot differently as a comedian when it comes down to jokes. And I also understand, like, having conversations with other people. I'm gonna give you a couple of just honest examples, right? For instance, I'm very open to learning. Like, I come in to learn, like I come in to listen, like, how can I show up as a better human being? That's honestly how I come into every conversation. But sometimes when I'm out, I will run into a person who is non-binary, and with my physical eyes, I may see what I see. And I've gotten better at this. I stopped calling people he or she. I stopped doing that. But every now and then I might slip up and say, oh, girl, you look good. And that person might go, oh, I'm a man. And then start biting my head off for making a mistake. And I think that, again, like, I think we just, you know, some people have called me, you know, the good gay for showing up to these conversations like this. But I just understand where you need to meet people at. That's just me. Like, I understand, in my opinion, that we should be able to make fun out of ourselves. I think that I don't have a problem listening to what somebody has to say, and if that's their opinion, even if it is ignorant, that's their opinion, because I know who I am. And I just wish that more of us in this community would, and Dave said something that I thought was great. You know, Hope has said a lot of great things. I want to, you know, Dave said something that was great, which he said, empathy is bisexual. It goes both ways. And so we want folks to meet us where we are. We should be willing to do the same thing too. And so, again, and I'll make another example real quick, but like me going to the comedy clubs and enduring what I endured, that's where we came from. And that was just a part of the conversation that was happening then, but I was willing to have that conversation and show up the way I needed to show up. That was showing up with excellence and my truth. You know, I wouldn't say I'm a good gay. I'm a gay. I'm who I am. I have my own opinions, my own thoughts, and I show up with those. One thing that I would like for our community to do, though, is put the same pressure on folks in our community who say things to each other that are even worse than he said to that audience. Because in our community, we say things that are a lot worse to and about each other. Hope knows if somebody isn't passing. You know, as a gay man, if somebody has a small dick or is broke or homeless or something like that, we say a lot worse. So I think we also need to work on our stuff before we go biting other folks' heads off. And we need to just all around have a lot more grace with each other and with other communities.
David?
I don't disagree with that. But in this moment, I struggle with, like, where do we find the energy when we got to deal with, like, having these conversations and doing the work of being excellent when niggas just get to be. And in this moment, I want Hope's comments to stand on their own, but Sampson, I'm struggling with this idea of, like, we're all grown, right? Like, I'm privileged in making the choice to have a public job where I invite people to make assumptions about my sexual identity, to make jokes about my sexual identity, to fucking send me death threats as a result of the work I do because I care about Black folks. I do that as an adult, and it's challenging. So my question is, like, do we really expect for children, like trans children, to be able to do this, to hold that space, right? And there's a part of me that keeps thinking, like, that which has been doesn't always have to be. And then to go back to where we started, what I know about intersectionality is that, like, we will never get to a place where we can move beyond this part of the conversation, which is like the recycling of trauma, unless and until we do the work that, like, I would like for us to do, right? For me, what's at the core of what Hope is talking about. And that acknowledges that, like, I have not asked a single trans young person, are not found, right? When I ask them, is it funny? Like, their answer is always no. And they can cite the jokes that people will say to them when they're being jumped in the hallway at school, the school that they're forced to attend, right? And so a part of my heart hears you when you say, Sampson, like, a part of our experience as Black folks is to be resilient. It's to, like, go through the things that are difficult. And I think to myself, like, though so much of the Dozens was about affirming, like, white supremacist bullshit, right? Like, ugly based on European standards, right? Like, fat without accounting for the ways in which, like, a Black girl might put on weight to, like, physically defend herself against grown-ass men trying to rape her, right? Like, again, me being hyper aware of all of Dave Chappelle's jokes about Adam's apples, when as a man, I don't have a protruding Adam's apple. I spent so much time, like, watching, not talking with my hands and not having a limp wrist, in part because what I knew is that, like, even if it wasn't an exchange of jokes, my safety was always at risk. And so I'm finding myself asking, like, how do we shift to a place where either one of two things are possible? We don't have to fight. Again, so many of us choose safety over, or being over safety, right? Like, my nails are painted and shit. I know that when I walk into certain spaces, that might invite not only jokes, but somebody to say something that's then going to cause me to respond. And if that's not true, and people just want to rest in it, like, oh, it's a joke because it doesn't affect you, then how do we fight fair? Because the reality is, I don't have the same platform that Dave Chappelle has. I don't have the same privilege that he has. And I've sat with this for a while. I heard it, my heart hurt it when you said it, Sampson, about, like, the Dozens. When I think about the Dozens, even in a place where our identities might mean that you have access to certain jokes, or you gonna say, right, like, fag rings in our ears in a particular way. If we are in a physical space, if we on the block, I'm from Inglewood, California, if we're playing the Dozens and you say the wrong thing, we're gonna fucking fight. If you call me a faggot, because that was a trigger, right? Usually you're gonna dance around it, the sugar, the tank, the whatever stuff. But you say that word, we're going to fucking fight. And the challenge is, in this space, there's no real way to fight. And so we are left to deal with the implication. We're left to deal with the repercussions. The last thing I'll say is this, Sampson, it hurt my heart to hear you talk about finding strength in being harassed simply because you were queer. Like, I really, in this moment, would love to know from other cis-het comedians, in particular who make jokes about our community, if they've had similar experiences. Because I'm struggling with how much of what we often ask of each other, again, doesn't account for the ways in which Black folks, cis het Black folks who might be well-intended, contribute to the perpetuation of white supremacy, while at the same time purporting to care about Black people. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. I mean, and I get what you're saying, but at the same time, the way I approach things, like, I mean, I get it. Like, we're on this panel, we are who we are. We are the LGBTQ plus community, but I deal with things as a Black person first, and just just looking at things practically. Stay with me, Hope. I understand, but stay with me, Hope. I look at things very practically. And I'm gonna be real. And you know, I respect everybody on the panel. I'm just honest. Like, I just put it out the way I see it. The reality is people are still gonna have their biases, and you need to learn how to navigate around that. For example,
or we can check motherfuckers to where they don't. They keep their biases to their text thread.
You can still check them, but this is the thing. Like, when it comes down to like humor, the dozens, understand that folks are still going to be showing up with their biases. Like, the reality is, yes, we can say, you know, you shouldn't have such and such bias. You should look at me differently because I'm queer. You shouldn't look at me differently because I'm dark skinned. And you can say that, but the reality is people are always going to think that and have that in their head. And in one way or another, it's going to get back to you that is the reality. For instance,
that doesn't have to be.
For instance, let me say this. For instance, I've been getting my teeth fixed, right? I have braces on. You can't see them because they're white. But before I got that done, men wouldn't pay attention to me. And now that my teeth are starting to get straight, the straighter they get, the better I get treated by men. And that just goes to show, like, people are superficial. Like, people do look at you and judge you based on perception. And the reality is you have to show up and be willing to improve yourself. And so for me, that was about being excellent. That's just what it was, because I couldn't even get a job as a comedian in our community. And this is our community. I'm talking about our shit. I'm talking about the same things that we're talking about right now. And I couldn't get a gig in our community. I had to go out into those other communities and learn how to relate and adapt and look at what was going on in the real world. And in the real world, people are going to have their perceptions. People are going to think what they want to think. And we have to understand that they're going to think what they want to think. But I think a part of that is adapting and being able to be real and show up to the conversation just as a person who understands that, and just be real.
So
that's my opinion.
Before we go, because I want to get to the next topic, because we can stay here. We talked about earlier equitable journeys, and everybody's on their journey, and you know, empathy is bisexual; it goes both ways. What I wish for and hope is that people start listening to the other end of people's stories. I'm all about the end result, right? What is happening with the end of this action? And one thing, you know, if you sit and really listen to it, because I watched the special twice too, constantly Dave Chappelle kept saying that people kept coming up to him and saying, basically, you're harming me. Your words are harming me. For years.
Hold on, Ben, can I say something real quick? And I see some folks in the comments. I just want to say, basically what I'm saying is, do you let people do them and still have your boundaries and stuff like that, but understand people are going to think the way they want to think and all that type of stuff. And just do you and just show up as your best self. And that's something that has worked for me.
It is about showing up as your best self, but it's also about creating equitable spaces and keeping people accountable to their harmful actions. I'm going to show up as me, and I'm going to have grace for you on your journey, but I'm going to hold you accountable for your actions. And if we are going to have any type of empathy, we need to begin to hear each other. For years, the community, the story about the comedian Daphne was akin to a white person saying, well, I have a black friend. Well, that doesn't mean you're not racist, and it doesn't mean your actions are not racist. And clearly, based on what I know about the business, you just don't throw up anybody to open up for you, especially if you're at that level. So was Daphne exploited? Right? Because it wasn't like it was by happenstance that I'm going to have a trans person open for me. For years, people have been condemning you for being transphobic. So let me just use this trans person to open up for me to quiet the noise. Similar to how a white person, how when Harry and who's Harry's wife? The princess? Meghan came out with their story on Oprah. Next thing you know, the queen got people in African attire staffing the prince and taking pictures. It's like, no, don't exploit that person with her African attire. She wasn't there any other day. And so now you have this comedian that you haven't vetted opening up for you. That just doesn't make business sense for me. And so using that story to then at the end imply that the trans community somehow offed her with discrimination, and then doubling down, well, I got a trust fund. I don't know what the trans community did. It doesn't sound like you want to be on an equitable journey. Even after all this, after the same trans community is saying you are harming me, I don't care. We're going to cancel our Netflix account. I don't care. I already got paid. I'm getting canceled. If this is what cancel feels like, I love it. You're doubling down on not caring about the other end of someone's journey. And if we're going to have equitable journeys, we need to start listening and caring and taking the feedback that we're getting. Flame Monroe, and this opens up my next question. Flame Monroe was on. Flame Monroe is a
wait, Ben, I'm sorry. I want to, before we go there, I have a question I'm struggling with. If we go back to where we started, Sampson, my brother, it's for you because you're the comedian. If comedy is about checking the pulse and shifting people, how do you hold space for that and this idea that you can't actually move people?
I didn't say that. I said you have to meet people where they are, is what I said. And I think when you meet people where they are, that is being able to respect people enough basically to say, you think what you think. And I think we do need to get to a point where we can say, I respect, I don't agree with it, because as a queer person, as a trans person, as a gay person, that's not me. But I respect your opinion. That's your opinion. And I think when you got two people who are just like screaming at each other, it's not going to work. I show up to conversations and I'm like, I respect your opinion. When I show up and I give people that respect, I respect your opinion, they then look at me a little bit differently. Oh, wow, you're not angry at me. And now they're able to listen to what I'm saying. And then they begin to relate to me, and then we find common ground, and then that's when they develop an understanding. That's something that has worked for me as a person, and it's done very well for me as a comedian. But again, I'm not going to lie, I have had to develop an extra layer of understanding as a Black gay comedian. But I mean, I'm coming into it creating a space for us where there were no spaces.
But I believe meeting people where they are, if you're jumping and engaging with them, meeting with them where they are, then you have a responsibility to help guide them on to the equitable side of the journey.
Exactly, which is why it's important to meet them where they are, because you are connecting with them. And then they're more likely to go with you if you do that than if you show up ready to bite their head off. And I mean, I get it. I appreciate that some folks in our community are showing up like, you know, we're here to kick your ass and do whatever and whatever. At the same time, what I believe works, and y'all don't have to agree. That's okay. Some people in the comments don't have to agree. But what I believe is you have to meet people exactly where they are, because we want people to meet us where we are. And if somebody, you know, think about the church, going to the church on Sundays where they used to tell us, oh, y'all are going to hell. If they would have approached us with a different approach, if there would have been a different approach where they would have developed relationships with the LGBTQ community, then a lot of us wouldn't have been, and I hate this word, a lot of us wouldn't have faced the trauma that we faced in the churches. But again, a lot of folks, we don't like, it makes us feel like we're smaller or something if we are meeting people where they are. I just believe in meeting people where they are. That's just me, because that's saying I get where you're coming from. That doesn't have anything to do with me, and being able to just create that space where we can have a conversation where they listen to us and we can listen to them.
Well, I think a part of my meeting people where they are is understanding how they came to their frame of thinking. And
Right.
if you understand how they came to their frame of thinking, you can then figure out your plan of action or attack or whatever you may call it. I used to be a preacher who got up and said homosexuals are going to hell.
Right.
I used to be a preacher who said you're going to burn forever for being gay. Meanwhile, I'm the gayest. There were contributing factors to my frame of understanding and my frame of thinking. It wasn't until people were willing to hold me accountable that I was willing to then change my mind. And so while I'm on this journey, I have to figure out where people are and how to best move them to the equitable side of the journey. That takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It took multiple things to get me to say, Ben, you're wrong. You've adopted this colonialism religion, and you need to stop. But it took time. We can't get anywhere, though, if you're not willing to listen to the people who are on the other end of your narrative, your jokes, your discrimination. And that's what I'm saying. Listen, for years, people have said, Dave, you're hurting me. Hadn't stopped them. After this special, there's an uproar. Hasn't stopped him. He's doubled down. So there's no way you can say you're an advocate for somebody, but won't listen to those people. And that's somewhere I can't meet you.
And I respect that. But again, what has worked for me and what I found as being effective is more people, like, and I'm not going to lie, most of my audience are straight people, you know, but it's like they listen to me, and those are the people, I mean, I'm talking about Bible-toting aunties who, when they first found out about me, was sending nasty emails and things like that. But they come out and they listen to what I am saying. As a matter of fact, it's more, I get more pushback from gay men for being willing to have that conversation with other people in ways that will, I believe, benefit our community down the line. But that's my opinion. And I get a lot of people don't believe in just accepting. I accept people. Like, that's who you are, that's your opinion, and that's okay. I also know who I am. But that, again, and I'm gonna stand by that.
Yeah. David, did you have anything else to say before we moved on?
Yes, I celebrate Sampson's lived experience. I also celebrate him kicking down doors to occupy stages, to be able to introduce more people to parts of our experience. And my heart hurts thinking about the unrewarded labor, the uncompensated labor you have been required to engage in order to do that. And my hope is that as we continue to do what we're doing here, we can hold space for not only the place you occupy, but also for my righteous frustration with what feels like how white supremacy works and all of that. I'm gonna name what Blossom, my sister, said in the chat, which is like, a part of me feels like the lessons that white supremacy tells us is to like wait and be patient and to teach and to like meet people where they are. Like Hope's insistence on us accepting that if this were anything other than a black cis het man, we wouldn't be here. Like, honestly has me grappling with, I also want us to hold space for anger, like righteous indignation also being important, right? Like, while I can engage in simple discussions, sometimes the way that I'm triggered physiologically and mentally means that like, that's not the way that I want to have a conversation. And I'd like for us as a community to be able to honor that there's no one right answer, that it's often the both and, right, that allows us to get to a space of liberation or shared understanding. But the hardest thing is for me accepting that most often what's celebrated, again, because of the way that white supremacy works, are the things that I understand keep us from the kind of liberation that I've seen in my own lived experience matter most. And again, when I think about the fact that like Black kids under the age of 13 are dying by suicide at rates that we've never seen since we've been collecting these numbers, I'm wondering like, how much longer are we gonna continue to wait? Like, how much more do I have to be patient around people's understandings of me that are misinformed because of white supremacy? And the expectation is that like, I'm just polite or I'm kind or anything other than human and responding in the way in which I do, right? at a minimum, I want us to hold space for more of this. And I also hope that we can get to the point of maybe seeing people where they are, and then helping to guide them in the direction that we need to go to with more expediency.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope, did you have anything before we moved on? Want to make sure.
I'm not going to meet you on the corner of bigotry and fuck shit on any given day. And I mean, that's just the way that's going to go for me, right? I believe in believing, you know, who people tell me that they are and who people show me who they are the first time. Because you're not going to get a chance to burn me up close, right? It's one thing for you to stick the poker in the fire while I'm at my house. It's another thing for me to know that it's heating up while I'm in my car. It's another thing for me to watch you take it out as I'm approaching your door through the window. But if I knock on your door and allow you to stick me with this burning thing that has been waiting on me since I left my home where I watched you put it in the fire, I'm stupid. At that point, it's on me, right? Because now I have watched this thing that has shown me time and time again that I knew time and time again, right, was meant to harm me, gave no fucks about how I was going to feel about the harm that was inflicted upon me, and I walked into it willingly because I needed to prove that I could take the harm in order for you to treat me accordingly. I'll be goddamned. I'll be goddamned. Because if that's the case, then we need to stop fighting for our little girls to wear their hair naturally the way it grows out of their scalp for school and work and all of these auditions and all of, we need to stop fighting for all of it. Meet the white folks where they are. Conform. Cut the locks. Forget the beards. Stop fighting for this natural shit. Go get your sew-in, sis. Get your clean cut, bruh. Wear your suits. Let's stop advocating for people who have alternative tattoos to be able to work in fields where they can still be doctors and still give us a heart surgery, even though they got a full sleeve. Let's stop advocating for all of it. Because if meeting people where they are means that everybody who lives alternatively has to meet folks where they are in order to live, motherfuckers will they would sing a different tune. But you see, the thing about it is that everybody can agree, because we've been taught this white supremacist wave of religion and this white supremacist wave of sociology and the way that we're supposed to, you know, be in community with each other, that there's one way to converse, that there's one way to socialize, that there's one way to love, that there's one way to date, there's one way to do X, Y, and Z, and then we throw our caveats on the things that everybody is doing because everybody is doing them. But since everybody ain't queer, since everybody ain't trans, there's no caveat for that yet. Right? Because at some point, everything becomes a normalization once somebody who has a little bit of money says it's normal. Because wearing skinny jeans was real motherfucking gay until Lil Wayne put a pair on.
Baby, they tease me like no other.
Eating pussy was real taboo until Lil Wayne said it was okay. Eating booty was real weird until Kevin Gates told y'all he was doing it left and right. And now all of a sudden we're able to have all of these open conversations that used to be real gay, real suspect, real queer. There was a point in time where Black men refused to wear pink because of the implications that went with that. And so my thing is, all of those things changed because people stopped meeting motherfuckers where they were. People stopped talking about the idea of allowing folks to sit in their ignorance at the expense of their individuality. And that is what we have to break away from this idea that I have to suffer in order to make it. People have to grow. Can we push that narrative? Folks shouldn't be able to evolve. We should be preaching evolution. Things have changed because they have to in order for the world to continue to move forward. Let's do that. Instead of meeting motherfuckers where they are, let's talk about the growth, right? And that's not just on one side, that's on both sides. So let's talk about the ways in which queer people should be listening to the way that the world is as we know it, right? But let's also talk about the ways in which cis het folks need to understand that queer people are not going anywhere.
Period.
So if we're going to have this empathetic duality, bisexual conversation about what it means to be empathetic, let's be very clear. Queer, trans, LGBTQIA plus people have already been empathetic. We're empathetic every single day. The world is catered to cis heteronormativity. What it's not catered to is the trash that it puts queer people through, and especially Black queer people. What Black people who are heterosexual don't understand is that not only are we queer, but we're Black too. Because when I call the police, they may not see my transness, but when they pull up and see a Black woman in a domestic dispute, if I'm not sitting there docile, if I give them any reason to believe that I'm Shaquita, oh, I'm going to jail. And and all the rest of my transness and stuff doesn't get thrown out of the window. I don't get to sit there like a white trans woman and cry wolf because I'm trans. I don't get those privileges. And what a lot of Black people think is the entire queer community is getting these privileges that come with all of this. That shit is written for white people. It's written for white queer gays. When y'all see these laws getting passed, don't think that the LGBT Black folks are jumping up and down, because we benefit last, if at all.
Period.
If at all. So I'm not meeting you where you are when meeting you where you are requires me to dumb down who I am as a human to the core of my soul. Because I would never ask a Black person to dumb down who they are at the core of their soul for the sake of a job or for the sake of some person's approval who could fire them tomorrow and hire them for a cousin just because they can. I would never ask somebody to go against who they are fundamentally to appease me. But also, I need for people to come to the table without the sheep's clothing. Don't come to the table talking about how much of an advocate and how much of an ally you are if really you have not gotten to the point where you truly understand. Say, I don't get it. That special would have read so much differently if Dave would have come up there and said, I don't get it. I'm not going to say that I'm fully transphobic because my intention isn't to hurt y'all feelings, but I don't see how I'm hurting y'all feelings. I feel like the shit that I'm putting out is something that y'all should be able to understand. And I guess I'm missing it. And that's funny to me because I'm trying my hardest here. Ha, ha, ha. It might not have been funny still, but at least it would have been something that felt more honest than saying I am not transphobic while also calling yourself a TERF 2 seconds later. It don't add up. So I can't meet you when what it seems like you're doing is trying to bait me in order to keep poking me with the same stick that I keep seeing you heat up. I'm not going to keep doing that.
I, love that analogy. And it really spoke volumes to me. And you already started talking about what I wanted to talk about next, which really gets exhausting in this conversation. Flame Monroe was on Don Lemon and said, I have a couple dogs in this fight. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm trans, but I'm Black first. And then went in on all the truths that Dave spoke about discriminations against the Black community. Should we have to choose which part of us shows up to the fight? Or can we all show up? Like all of our identities show up and fight for all of us? Like, why do we have to negate the rest of us because we are Black first?
Well, I'll start. I do think you should show up as yourself. We have to, because we're, like I said, we are who we are. But I think we also need to understand how those different parts work in different ways. For instance, when I'm having a conversation with another Black person, especially about trans or gay issues, mostly gay because I'm not trans, but I have been closely connected enough with trans folks in a way where I'm either able to answer simple questions, either make a phone call and say, here, have this conversation. And thankfully they aren't, they're willing to answer certain questions as long as it's respectful. But again, when I'm having a conversation with a Black person about LGBTQ issues, I show up as a Black person first. And that is because I understand that The same way I might accidentally mess up and say something wrong and I'm in our community and I get my head bitten off about it, somebody who's not in our community is not going to get it. Like, they're going to mess up sometimes. They're going to say some stuff that might be a little ignorant. And what Dave Chappelle said, even though I know that he's not trans or homophobic, is no different from what one of our cousins or uncles might say at a picnic or a family reunion, but you know they don't hate you, they just say little ignorant stuff. And again, that's why I say meet people where they are. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, my experience is different. Within the last year, my mother's brother, my Uncle Ronnie, who used to call me a Captain Caveman, a cartoon that existed when I was younger that we sort of shared together, decided, and again, this is somebody I've known my entire life. If you had asked me before this encounter, I would have said, yeah, he loves me. He at least respects me. He comments on my shit. He gives me my roses. He tells people when I'm in the White House that I'm his nephew. He decided when I made a post celebrating Zaya Wade and Montero Lil Nas X, and this generation of children who are in this space of, again, I'm not meeting you where you are. How about you meet me where I am? Where I have been. How about we shift the power dynamic? When I wrote this post about these babies, he decided to comment on Facebook and talk about how the problem with our community of Black folks is that there's no real men to stand up. And then proceeded to use some of the things that were reflected in comments Ben made about church hurt, points you made, Sampson, about things that we've had to work through. And here's what's different from me. And again, I celebrate Ben for creating a space for us to have this dialogue, is that, like, I don't know that the nigga loves me. And at this point, I'm just interested in trying to figure it out. I to Hope's point, like, I'm not meeting you on that corner. So you take your comments and you deal with them. You will never have access to me again. And if that makes me sensitive, then so be it. But in a world where I have to deal with the reality of struggling with whether or not I can find love, because we don't get to be as Black queer men. And most people are telling me that, like, the only way that I'll do it is if I settle for a white fucking man, right? Or where I have to get kicked out of an Uber and don't know if I'm getting kicked out of an Uber because I'm Black or my nails are fucking painted. Or I'm sitting next to a man that somebody assumes is my partner, right? Like, I don't, let me name that in a world where we are asked so often to be so fucking understanding and to be so excellent. I say this again, like, I'm getting a PhD, not to talk about shit that I don't know based on my lived experience, but to do so in ways that, like, make it acceptable for me to do it on white people's terms. I'm not saying that I don't understand the position you occupy, Sampson. I'm saying that my experience has been different to the extent that I don't have the grace that I love that you still have to do this work with people who willingly occupy that space. When we continue to say, not only is this harmful, I get that to you it's just a joke. I'm saying to you that it's not. Right? Like, it's you saying it's funny, I'm saying it's not. And if the space thereafter is, right, like, your ability to laugh at something is more important than my ability to be, then we got a fucking fundamental problem. And in a world where, again, so many of us don't have family, right? Like, we don't have access to love. It's why I don't use gay, I use same gender loving. When people have these conversations about us, they don't center love. I don't trust it. And I also, that clearly triggered me, because sometimes it be your own. And the hardest part about this version of the conversation is, like, Black people should get it. Cis-het Black folks should fucking get it. It shouldn't require all of this to understand that, like, words matter. The jokes hurt. Yeah, I can fucking fight, but I don't like the way that my body responds when I'm in a space where I feel like I have to fight. I'll do it because I'm from Inglewood. Because I'm not the one to be tried, because my mama ain't raised no punks. Because niggas assume that gay people are soft. Try it if you want to. But we shouldn't have to do all of that. In a world where white people are literally going to the fucking moon, we shouldn't be having conversations about choosing to be or being safe.
Right. And I respect that, and I understand exactly where you're coming from and everything. But when I, again, and I'm gonna stand by this, you know, and David, I totally understand where you're coming from. I get it. Hope, I understand. Like, I have some good that I have conversations with where these sisters have really allowed me to ask questions about things. And again, I do it respectfully, because I know some people approach trans women and they ignorant. They need to be hit upside the head for some of that shit they be saying. So I understand the anger. At the same time, when it comes down to Black people, and I'm not worried about white people right now, I'm worried about us. I know how Black people think, and I know we can be ignorant. We can. So when I'm speaking to another Black person, I first meet them as a Black person, because when they hear about queer, when they hear about any of that stuff, they equate us with white. That's what they do. So I meet them as Black people and have that conversation first. And then by meeting them there, they go, oh, well, let me ask you this question about how you do this or that in the community. And a lot of them are surprised that we're so pro-Black. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's just the reality of it. And a lot of folks disagree, but again, we didn't build the world. This is the way the world is. It's what it is.
But we did.
We
built it. We built this world. Like
we didn't make the rules. We didn't do that stuff. And I would.
So why should we play by them?
A little bit differently. I would be able to look at this a little bit differently if we didn't also treat each other just as bad as everybody else does.
But Sampson, that's how white supremacy works, right? And to the extent that like a manifestation of white supremacy is we buy into the bullshit, there are also some of us, in particular, Black, queer, trans, and non-binary folks who are much more enlightened, right? Who have access to frameworks and principles like intersectionality that allow us to show up in ways that are different, to apply different tools to run different plays. So in this moment, I accept that, yes, at times, as a result of white supremacy, Black folks show up in ways that perpetuate the bullshit that we get from white folks wanting to maintain their fragile ass space in this world. And what if we also hold space for meeting Black folks in a space where we understand that they have infinite capacity, right? Like some Octavia Butler shit, to imagine Afrofuturistic worlds that are not tainted by white folks and their bullshit. What if we started to meet people there and then engaged in conversations based on that? I guess what I'm struggling with is that which has been doesn't always have to be. And at this point, we've done enough. I feel like this is, again, I think this is where the distinction is at this point. And both two things can be true. But if the result of us continuing to be nice and polite has resulted in us continuing to be harmed and fighting for the ability to sit at the table, or to be able to play the dozens equitably, or any of those other things, what would happen if we tried something different? If we shifted and then forced people to meet us where we are or where we want to be?
Right. And again, like, I get it. And I think that we are all working to get to a certain type of place. And I know some folks disagree. We're all working to get to a certain type of place. I'm just saying I'm no longer angry about it. I can't be angry about it because it's what is. It's our world. And when you stop being angry about it, and this doesn't just apply to people, I think this applies to life. When you stop being angry about it and you look at it for what it is, this is the way people think, this is what people do, then you can show up more effectively. And that's just something that has worked for me, not just in dealing with people, but in life in general.
And I feel like anger was introduced into this conversation now for the first time. So like, where's that coming from? Is it a response to the way that I'm engaging in this discussion, or something unrelated?
No, it's totally unrelated, because I think, and I mean, I knew when I came into the conversation with this view, I was like, well, some folks are going to disagree, and that's perfectly okay. It's more so if you don't show up like, I'm tired of this shit, y'all need to do this and do that, and I'm tired of it. A lot of people don't understand how you can come into it and understand what's going on. Because I understand the anger. I understand all of it. And I'm affected the same way. I just respond to it differently. And that has been something that has allowed me to be able to change people in the world that I live in. And again, like I come out of the Black church. I come from Southeast DC. Like I come up and thankfully when I was growing up, I had trans women who used to do my mother's hair. Kim and Bianca. They used to, so early I was exposed. So thankfully I was educated about a lot of those things that were going on. Even though a lot of the issues have evolved, we have a deeper understanding. But even being exposed to that, that helped me in the way that I approach things the way that I do, because this was the early 90s and I watched how those women navigate. And it was like simply being, okay, I understand you got that joke. I'm going to crack my joke too. And then they, again, playing the dozens, they would laugh with each other outside. But I think just for me, and again, this is me as a comedian mostly, when you take yourself too seriously, when you're not able to get in on the joke, people will be able to use it against you.
I want to keep saying that there's a end of the joke that harms people tremendously. The first time I ever interacted with a transgender person was in Philadelphia. I was at a bus stop with my family, and there was a parent. I didn't know it at first. I was a kid. A parent, trans woman walking down the street. These guys got out of their car, crossed the street, beat her up, threw her over a Burger King fence. And I'm looking around like, where's help? 911, somebody. My family even said, that's what she gets. Now, she wasn't bothering anybody, walking down the street, strangers beat her up, no one helped. That is the other end of these jokes that are not funny because people live on the other end of these jokes. And something you said, David, and something you said, Hope, you said Black people should get it. I experienced homophobia from Black community before I experienced racism from a white community. I grew up in a very Black community in Philadelphia, and I heard every name in the book: sissy, fag, queer, Ben gay, all of it. It wasn't until we moved into a white community when I was around 6 or 7 that I first heard the word nigger. And that is what drove me to have this conversation, because most of the feedback that I was seeing on social media was from Black people saying that trans people were being sensitive, overreacting, it doesn't really hurt. And it's like, but none of you are trans and none of you are living this experience. And that's what I want people to understand. There's no way you can tell the people living this experience how they should feel about the other end of something that demeans their humanity, jokingly or not. And it's demeaned on a huge platform. It's demeaned by someone that does not have that lived experience. And it's demeaned by someone who should get it. He, as a Black man who is supposed to be standing up for all Black men, should get it. The executives who signed off on it, who aren't Black, don't expect them to get it. But we, of all people, should get how it feels to be at the other end of someone's jokes, the other end of someone's discrimination. And I'm wondering if it's even gender bias. Because as I even think about like a Kanye and a Chrisette Michele. Chrisette Michele sings for Donald Trump, we threw her under the mountain. Not even a bus. We found the heaviest mountain and threw her under it. Kanye is in this man's office singing his praises, and the same Black people are at his concerts supporting his stuff. And so I'm wondering if he was a different gender, would this have gone over well? I'm wondering if he was a different race, would it have gone over well? Like, are we giving people passes for the same actions? And
well, yeah. I mean, that goes back to what I said earlier when we know about the certain biases that exist. We know that a Black man can do that, but a Black woman can't. You know, and so again, it's like it's just about you.
Not equal the end. Does that not equal the action still being wrong?
As far as what do you mean?
What he's doing, what he's saying, his jokes, does that, if a black woman couldn't get up and do that because of her gender, does that still not make his actions, although he's a black man, wrong?
When it comes to that, I'm not here to say whether that's right or wrong. I think he has a right to say whatever he wants to say. But again, you know, Flame says things like that. And she's a black trans woman. And people...
No, she is not. Flame is a he, she, we that makes fun of gender all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I have a newfound understanding for Flame, but Flame would be, for all intents and purposes, a non-binary person. Flame is old school that does not understand the ways of the new school, and people bring Flame onto these platforms in this program to affirm their bullshit, because Flame to them is what they would deem to be the respectable trans person, while also being deemed to be the trans person that is the thing that go bumps in the night. At the end of the day, when you see Flame Monroe, while she may be presentable trans, you know that that is a trans person. That is somebody that men know to avoid. That is somebody that women know are not on their same level. That is somebody that people understand to be a caricature of what they want all trans women to be. When they think about transness, this is what they want us all to represent, what they want us all to look like, and how they want us all to behave in order for them to see us as validating people within society. I'm not buying this idea, and I'm not taking this whole notion of people who represent these very skewed ideas of what it means to be a part of the community when they come from the time period where people were bowing down and being okay. Flame grew up in the period where the kids were running out of their houses at 2 a.m. to make it to the club that was in the back of the parking lot somewhere, that was makeshift, that they still had to like run out of when the heterosexual people were walking down the block. That is not the type of person that I'm going to say should be representing me today. Now, what might have flown back then, what might have been okay back then is not okay now, because of what? Evolution. As people, we evolve. As people, we need to constantly grow in order for our ideas to shift, in order for the society to move on, and in order for people to gain new ideas and functions. Nothing is allowed to stay the same, because if it stayed the same, we would still be pushing rocks and trying to figure out what the fuck fire was with 2 sticks, right? And that's just the thing. Like, a lot of y'all are missing it. You're saying, oh, is it about being black first and bringing that to the table and all of these things? But at the end of the day, bitch, hello? I do bring it to the table. I can't get rid of it. Don't y'all love to say that? I can't get rid of it. So I don't leave it at home. I don't show up light-skinned. I don't show up Colombian. I don't show up French. I'm not showing up European. And so therefore, as a black person, I am meeting you as a black person. What you're not understanding is the nuance of my blackness, and you're choosing to not do that. And the thing about it is, it's really funny how when the black hoteps get on their platforms and they be all they getting donations. When black women get on their platform and they talking shit about the trans girls, it's giving very much so unproblematic, until they start talking about black men. Now she too loud. Now she too ghetto. Now she too da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But when she was talking shit about the LGBT community and supporting y'all niggas, she was all of the things in the Black Queen. When LGBT people get on platform and we say, I understand where y'all are coming from. Like, I definitely get it. I just kind of feel like, you know, at the end of the day, that joke wasn't okay. But I get it. I understand. We get a pass because we're that docile. But when we meet y'all where y'all are at with that same energy that y'all come at us at, then it's a problem. Because you want to be able to come at me like this and then expect me to come at you like this. And that's not how that's going to work. Because at the end of the day, if everything remained the same, and if we constantly was like, well, this is just how it is, that's just how it is, that's how it was, if we accepted things for that's how it was, we'll still be riding in the back of the bus. If Rosa didn't say fuck that shit that day for the second time because somebody had already tried it, if Rosa was like, well, somebody else did it already and nothing happened, imagine what we would still be at. If Malcolm didn't say fuck that shit, we gonna meet these white people with the same energy that they giving us, where would we still be? If Martin would have been like, you know what, they throw one more bomb through my house and I'm done, where would we be? And so at some point, people have to recognize that I can't meet you with this docile motherfucking demure shit, because then you start to play me for pussy, and I'm not gonna do that. We can't, we can't, you gotta understand and you gotta see that if you swing, I'm a duck and clock your ass. I'm going to duck and clock your ass. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When people think that you pussy, they play pie with you and you get fucked. And I'm not, like, I think that it's the thing that people don't feel like we should have this type of energy. You shouldn't be, like, you shouldn't stand up for yourself. You shouldn't want, like, how dare you tell me not to marginalize you? How dare you tell me that I can't treat you like a tertiary citizen? How dare you? But the problem is, and what a lot of people don't see, is that you don't see queer people out here beating up on heterosexual people because of the things that we've been through. Right. You don't see queer people out here just hopping out on niggas, even the niggas that have done something to them. You know what happens after these kids get jumped at school? It's very unlikely that they come back with a group of queer people and beat them up. You know what happens? They avoid them for the rest of the time that they're at that school.
Or they drop out.
They don't want no more smoke. The smoke is no, like, it's null and void. So when y'all are talking about coexistence, and when y'all are talking about accepting things for as they are and leaving people alone, at the end of the day, the core of this argument is about treating motherfuckers like human beings. Don't treat me how you want to be treated, because some of y'all are okay with being treated like shit. Treat me how I ask to be treated, as long as I respect you. Come at me with respect and you'll be treated with respect. And the thing about it too, Brandy, I've seen some of your comments, my love, and all of this ties in, honey bunch. It's not let's get back to Dave, because this is all about Dave.
It's more than Dave.
It's more than Dave. The whole reason why a lot of y'all don't want to branch out into the fullness of this conversation is because you want to be able to defend one person, right? Because that's all you know how to do in this particular instance. A lot of y'all don't have your own thought process, so you can't venture out and allow the conversation to evolve, because all you've known is the barbershop conversation that you've heard. All you've known is the hope tuck niggas around your neighborhood. Y'all are picking up things and you can't wait to use the points that other people have used on Twitter, and we've moved beyond that. And now you want us to go back and we're somewhere else, my love. It's elevated. He's still here. The conversation is still about that. But at the end of the day, this is the repercussions from what Dave has done.
Yes.
These are the conversations
the end of the
that
joke.
we end up with.
This
is what jokes turn into, babe.
Yes.
So we have to, like, we gotta, like, we have to stop with this idea of trying to force people into this whole this notion that in order for y'all to survive, y'all gotta tuck y'all head, duck and cover. Because y'all know what that sounds like? White folks. If you just duck and cover, yes sir, no sir, you'll be okay. If you just do what Master say, it'll be all right. If you just take what's given to you, it'll be fine. And what's so funny is that the same people that are on Dave's side are some of the same people that sat back and watched Pose and cried when Candy died. Ooh. Oh my God, that was so sad. I can't believe people are going through that. Oh my God, this is just so bad. Right. But when real life trans people are dying, the empathy ain't nowhere near that. Y'all be the same people in the comments talking about, well, what he do? Meanwhile, it's 100,000 comments saying, well, I could tell that's a man. But then y'all give these people a pass as if he couldn't tell either. So it's 100,000 comments, 75,000 of y'all are saying you can see that that's a man, but you don't think that the person that committed the crime could also tell? Because that's transphobia at work. Because that is you wanting to ignore the idea that Black men should be held accountable for the shit that they do. That is what Dave did in that special. He ignored the plight of the Black trans women that he's more likely to affect, to highlight these high praises of white trans women for the sake of being able to say that there are some people within the community that are okay with this type of treatment, but those are not the people that are most likely affected. You know who's most likely affected? That girl who got jumped and thrown over the fucking fence. The girls in New Orleans who were on the stroll and had AK-47s pulled out on them for minding their business and trying to work. But y'all don't know about these things, or at least you pretend like you don't. But all of y'all got gay friends. All of y'all have gay friends. All of y'all have a cousin somewhere. All of y'all got an Uncle Leroy. All of y'all have a sister, brother, somebody that done transitioned somewhere deep in the family that you act like they don't exist. But then y'all turn around and play ignorant as if y'all don't know what people are going through. Y'all turn around and play ignorant as if y'all don't know that the boys on your block beat up the gay boys and the girls whenever they get a chance to. Y'all turn around and play ignorant as if you don't interact with homo and transphobia on a daily basis. You act like you didn't see that girl coming to the nail shop the other day who wasn't passable, and even see the Asian people talking about her before they did her nails. Y'all act like y'all don't see these things. But we all can, if there was a joke about it, we would all laugh. And you know why? Because we've all experienced it. Because art imitates what? Life. We can't laugh at it if we've never seen it or had a personal experience with it. But some shit, once again, just ain't funny. And y'all keep missing
that. As we close out, and just wow, so much you said, I have to go back and rewatch, because it is powerful, and it is really speaking truth to power. Two things. One of my old mentors, an old white guy in Miami, he's done amazing things around the country. He said, Benjamin, no one's ever been given their freedom. Most people who got free fought for it, shed some blood for it. And so to your point that you're making, everyone is saying people are too sensitive, people are being over dramatic, people are being too much, people are too vocal. But we're living in a time where we are no longer accepting this norm. And one of the things that Dave did, which really disheartened me, was he asked us to, in so many words, forgive the baby and forgive Kevin Hart, but made no mention of how to keep them accountable for their actions, other than don't do that and don't say that. That's not keeping someone accountable. And even with Kevin Hart, all Kevin had to do was apologize and stood in his non-apology. That's why he's not hosting.
But went to Ellen. But I gotta say this, because I was just talking about this before we got on. I was talking about this with my friend Nick. Don't try to bullshit me with this bullshit play story about all Kevin Hart wanted to do. His dream was to host the Oscars, and all he had to do was motherfucking apologize. And he doubled down on it because every single one of them that have pulled it have wanted to be the nigga that stood up to the fags. Every single one of them that have pulled that shit didn't necessarily do it because they believed that what they were doing was right, but they did it because they wanted to be the one to get the dap in the studio and the daps at the club and the shout outs from the black men that are doing the things. They all want to be that guy that didn't bow down to the faggots. And all you had to do to live your dream was to say, I'm sorry. But you know what you did? You doubled down on it. And then the sad part about it, and the part that pissed me off the most, was that afterwards, you had the nerve and the unmitigated fucking goal to get your ass up on a white lesbian show and allow her the space to affirm you for what you did to black queer people. I don't give a fuck how many times Ellen says, it's okay, I'm not pissy with you. Ellen is a multi-million-dollar white lesbian who does not have to deal with the abuse that black children already have to deal with for being alternative in any way. So she can't affirm you, give you an apology, accept an apology, or none of that shit on behalf of black LGBT people. And how dare you insult us by thinking that shit was gonna stick, when all you had to do to host the Oscars was say, I'm sorry, 2 weeks before. So don't give me that sob story about how all he wanted to do was host the Oscars. All he had to do for the free, no press necessary, no interview necessary, was hop on his Instagram, per the Oscars ask, and make a post. They didn't even ask, from what I remember, they didn't even ask that the post have to stay up. They just said, apologize to the people. But you were so hell-bent on upholding toxic black male masculinity, and you were getting your gots, and I'm sure behind the scenes, all of the niggas was calling him like, yeah, Kev, da-da-da-da-da-da. But them same niggas didn't help you host the Oscars, did they? Half of them probably didn't even watch it. but that's who you were doing it for. So I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad because all you had to do was be a decent fucking human being and say I'm sorry. And you couldn't do it because you were too busy holding your nuts and holding on to your Napoleon complex to be one of the guys for once. Because guess what? Even behind all of those short jokes, it's not funny when you're not really considered to be one of the boys because you 4'2". And this was your time to shine and be one of the boys. And that shit didn't even work because you still had to turn around and apologize. So they dapped you up one week and clowned you the next because they said, oh, them faggots got you. You done went on Ellen. Now you looking stupid. And that's all, to me, that's all this is for Dave as well, is finally appearing to be the one that didn't bow down to the fags. They not gonna remove your video. You got it. Finally, somebody stood up. Finally, they're not gonna do it to you.
Right. Because when you try to make sense of people's actions, you said that this is your last show. You're not doing anything for a while. So to commemorate your last show, you go in on the transgender community. I mean all the way in. The majority of your show is about the queer community. This is how you want to commemorate your career and do your last show. And then at the end of it, ask us to atone the other black men that have been canceled to prove it's always psychology, always a root, might be off, but it makes sense to me. Y'all can't cancel me. I'm going to talk about y'all. Y'all won't do me like the Baby, and you won't do me like Kevin Hart. Watch me. And this has been his thing ever since he left the first time and was railing against not wearing a dress in Blue Streak or whatever the movie is, railing not wearing a dress on Saturday Night Live, railing about losing control on a Dave Chappelle show. Like these issues are not new to him. And that's what I want people to understand, that it's not harmless because he's been on it for years, which represents a lot of the toxicity that comes from people who should understand. And that's the hurtful part. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
My whole thing is you did all of that. You talked about Daphne and all of these things. And somebody, please correct me if I'm wrong. But after all of that, you didn't even dedicate the show to her. I don't give a fuck about no trust fund, but you did all of this. You did all of these things. You didn't even dedicate the show to her. No in loving memory, no RIP, all of those pictures of all of these famous people. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I am not above reproach for correction on this, but I don't remember seeing. I don't remember seeing, based on his description of what Daphne looked like, I don't remember, out of all of those photos at the end of the show, not one of them was him and her. So you talk about how this woman supposedly died for defending you, and it was the woes became too much for her. But then you ain't even dedicate the show. You couldn't do so much as to give her an RIP in loving memory to Daphne. Have you ever even taken a picture with this woman? But y'all were such good friends, and you set up a trust. That sounds like white people throwing money at black people and saying, but I gave $1 million to the Black Negro Fund. What else y'all want me to do? And that's supposed to atone us. Like, come on now. Like, where is the actual proof in the pudding? Don't sit on stage. Like, at the end of the day, yes, he's a comedian, but he's also an actor. Don't sit on stage with the fake almost about the crowd look in your face talking about how she was da-da-da-da-da-da, this, that. He knew what the fuck he was doing. You knew what you were doing. Those shows, from what I know, and Sampson, correct me if I'm wrong, people rehearse their lineup. People get their jokes right to an extent. There's bullet points. There's all types of things that they plan so that they can follow this joke with this joke and lead into this with this thing. And my thing is, he knew exactly what he was doing. It was a lineup. It's a one-man show. And so you knew when to turn on this emotion. You knew when to turn on that. He's the GOAT because he's been here for the GOAT to some of y'all. He's the GOAT because he's been here and he's done this work for forever. He knows how to turn the buttons. And so I'm not buying this falsified sense of manufactured care for a community when you don't even, this person that you use this woman's memory and legacy to try to force feed folks this idea that you've changed or that you are evolved or that you're not this person. But you didn't even have the nerve, or you didn't even have the courage, rather, to give her space beyond using her as a tactic for your comedy show to appear nuanced. And that's trash.
And insulted the daughter at the end with the "I knew your father" joke. Now, why would a girl mourning the death of a parent want to hear a joke like that? And will forever hear it because it is all over the world on Netflix.
So
Because
let's stay in this space. Let's stay in this space, but let's move away from the gay shit because that's still too much for some people. What I struggle with in this moment, that is very much connected to Dave Chappelle, is the consequence of jokes. So David now wonders if the 2003 "Piss on You" skit from the Chappelle Show, which made an actual experience of a 14-year-old Black girl getting pissed on, a joke about R. Kelly having a pee fetish, right? So to a lot of folks who didn't know her, who maybe didn't have a daughter, right? Like the kinds of experiences that rappers talk about when they celebrate becoming a feminist because they finally have a female identified child, right? Like, could it have been possible for us as a community to have gotten to asking questions about surviving R. Kelly earlier if that joke didn't exist in the world? Or if there was a space for us to talk about and unpack that joke in the way in which we're doing now, that centered the lived experience of a 14-year-old girl who was abused. And was abused by a grown-ass man who was until recently in a position of power and was protected by other grown-ass cis het Black men, right? So again, I'll name not being as critical when I was first introduced to it, but being a Black feminist, loving Black women, having a niece, right? Like, that joke didn't land on me in the same way that it landed on other people. And for the folks who are still in the comments wanting to just suggest that we shouldn't even be having this discussion because all of this is about jokes, I think that is hiding that it's at the expense of actual people. Actual Black people. That's got to matter for something.
It's the actual Black people for me, like standing up and saying, I'm for Black people. I left the industry for Black people because of, whatever reasons he said he left, but still not standing up for the fullness of Black people, right? This is why we had to have an all Black Lives Matter march, because the Black Lives Matter movement, though, started with queer folks, was leaving our issues out. It broke my heart to see the transgender person, I believe it was in Minneapolis or something, they had just finished marching, people in Black Lives Matter shirts.
Ayana Dior.
Ayana Dior.
Ayana Dior.
I said, well, didn't we all just come from the same march? What is going on here? And so that has been...
No, because some of those niggas were having jokes and playing the dozens and engaging in the kinds of practices that we are identifying as problematic. Not all of us are at the march.
True. So I just want to know, because I don't know when Instagram is going to cut us off. We've talked a great deal about some great things, and I would love to have y'all back for further conversation. How do we press forward and stand for our trans family? Like, what do you want people to know? And you can choose who to talk to. You choose the people who are in the fight. Listen, this is how you gird your loins and strengthen and show up to the fight, or the Black people who just don't get it and who are saying it's just jokes and there's no harm, no foul. How do we press forward?
I think at this point, what we have to be honest about is that setting healthy boundaries and holding folks accountable is not the same as asking people to not be themselves or requiring special treatment or exemption, right? It is okay for folks to demand respect in the way that feels good for them without also requiring them to shrink themselves so that you don't have to do the work. And moving forward, I think that there's going to have to be true understanding of not meeting people where they are, but knowing who you are dealing with, right? I think that I will agree with Sampson on that one, is when you know who you are dealing with, we have to stop acting surprised when they show up as themselves, right? When people show up as who they are, we got to stop acting like, oh my God, I can't believe, right? Because what I have heard as I'm listening to Sampson is we all have had these experiences, right? We just deal with them a little bit differently. And what I'm hearing from Sampson is, I'm not disagreeing with y'all. I've been through these things. I just navigated differently, so I ain't got to deal with the extra shit that run my blood pressure up, right? And I think that that is something that we can all take with us, right? But that is for the people who choose that, right? Choose your peace, right? If that is what makes you, and if that's what feels good on your soul. If ignoring it, if meeting folks where they are, if allowing people to be who they are and stand in their bigotry is what works for you so that you can get through the day, do that. But also, in the same respect, what I want a lot of y'all to understand and what I want a lot of y'all to see is that at no point did any of us here disrespect each other because we don't agree. And that's all I think people are trying to get folks to understand on this topic, is that you don't have to be disrespectful to trans people to say that you think that those jokes were funny. You don't have to be disrespectful to queer people to say that you couldn't find the fault in that special. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to say it and then add your own little flavor, sprinkle a little salt in the wound, and then kick a bitch out the window and be like, but I really just don't agree on the way down. Like that's just like, that's not how that works. And nobody is going to be able to take that without feeling the need to retaliate or protect themselves.
Thank you. Sampson?
Hope has just been absolutely beautiful all night, you know. And again, you know, listening to what Hope has said and what a lot of other trans women and folks from the trans community say, I've never said nobody from the trans community has a right to feel that way or be angry or any of that. You know, when those sentiments are expressed, I think we do need to listen and support, you know, especially people who do know better, you know, support and stand behind the trans community, and also show up how we need to show up for ourselves as Black gay men and lesbian women and anybody else in the community. With that being said, you know, as a comedian, I'm aware of how the business works. And so I saw a lot of comments where people disagree with me. And I'm proud of myself for being able to really stand in what I know is my truth when it comes to navigating this business, because I know what works in this business. And I know what people thinks, I don't make jokes out of trans people unless I'm on stage talking about how trans people kick ass. But that's me. I'm from the community. At the same time, when I'm having a conversation with people who don't know anything about LGBTQ issues, like Hope said, I come in there just like, you know, I know who you are. I know how you think, and I'm just going to have to deal with that and work with it, and you're going to get to where you got to go to. But I know by showing up with that attitude, that's something that has worked for me, you know, and so it's not to invalidate anybody's anger. You know, I listened to what David said earlier tonight, you know, about how you spoke about the situations that you've dealt with. We all do those things differently, but I'm just here to offer my perspective on what it looks like to have a conversation in a way that I think works and that I have seen work for me. And so for folks who are a part of this conversation, who are listening, you know, you may agree with Hope's approach, which I think is wonderful. You know, or you may agree more with David's approach, which I think is great as well. But there's also this approach, and I think it all is about us showing up to do the work that we do in the different ways that we do it, knowing that we all are working to achieve that same goal. And so that's why conversations like this are very important to have. And I really respect everybody who showed up here tonight and everything that everybody had to say, even the folks in the comment who may have disagreed with my stance. That is perfectly okay. I love it. And hope your passion just from when I first met you, your passion has always moved me. So thank you. And I learn a lot every time I listen. So thank you. And thank you, Ben, for hosting the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. David?
I think I can only add value by, again, where Sampson ended saying thank you to you, Ben, for creating the space. One thing that's been challenging for me is that traditional media doesn't really allow space to do this, to have conversations that accept and appreciate that context matters. And this is a very nuanced discussion that we've had. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to have it. I am sitting with the what to me feels like a struggle in that we just did a version of what I've been resisting in our conversation in terms of the approaches, which is like show up and show out. And there's a way that I celebrate Hope's brilliance and also bristle thinking like she shouldn't have to be brilliant. She should just be able to be. And so I think it's important to name that. And I also point of personal privilege as one who is often, I think, read as angry. I do hope we have another version of this conversation where we talk more specifically about white supremacy and the ways in which that constrains our conversation and how it is that we engage not only in the conversation, but the actions thereafter. But if y'all hear anything, hear my heart when I say, I'm thankful for the way that y'all show up in the world and our ability to show up in community.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for joining. One of the things that really pushed for me to like, let me get David on was people were saying, David said, cancel Dave Chappelle. I'm like, David never said that. I don't know. And then I'm reading all these, I don't care what y'all gays think. We're not canceling Dave Chappelle. No one asked for that. We're asking for accountability. And so you cannot, and this is what I want to leave with, holding people accountable does not mean canceling them.
Right.
Now, some people absolutely need to be canceled. They are toxic. They need to lose their platform or have your own platform, but you're not going to get the sponsorship. You're not going to get the support. We're not going to buy your tickets. Have your own platform. You have social media. Do what you want. There are some people that need that, but not everybody needs to be canceled. But we need to cancel the sources that allow them to continue on in their bigotry. And that's what David went to, right to the source. Let's pull this from this platform. Because we know you say you are for us. During Pride Month, you say you are for us. But what is so funny?
It's storming out in LA, y'all, so my lights went out and I was trying to act normal.
I was wondering what was going on over there.
See?
Yeah,
see, we can laugh. Not
so
all of us do sensitive. We can laugh at stuff.
And so, no, we're not. Well, I don't know. There's some posts about boycotting Netflix, but I don't think that'll be very successful. I say put your energy where there will be success, where at least you can have some movement. But we have to get to a place where we are hearing what people are saying. If someone says your actions is harming me, be willing to sit down and have a conversation about it and not be dismissive and not stand strongly in your stance and dig into it even more. We'll never get anywhere. And so thank you for this conversation. We will be back pending schedules because I know everybody's doing amazing things. I pick up Hope's book. Sampson, you said you have something
special on Amazon.
Her book, what's the name of the book again, Hope?
Until I Met Black Men. Just click the link in my bio. That's the easiest way to buy it. It is on Amazon. It is on Barnes and Nobles, but I get more coin when you click the link in my bio. I know you're going to want to do the Prime thing. I know it's verified when it's out there in these real stores and whatnot, but I get more coin when you buy it from the link that is in my bio.
Right.
Amazon takes
Correct.
70% of my sales. Okay.
Yeah.
Do not let Amazon pay me $2. Okay. Just click the link in my bio. It's the same book. I promise you. It's the same book. So link is in my bio.
And my lights went out again, y'all.
Again. We should have started by praying for the spirit of Babyface to cover this conversation. Now we got the spirit of Teddy Riley over there with you.
My God.
No, it's the storm outside, but
Hope
no.
is still out. But yes,
No,
I have a
if
book
y'all are on
well.
oh yeah.
I'm Black, I'm a minister, I'm gay. And as Hope said, please don't go to Amazon. Go to my site, Black Love Wins. This is how I'm funding this campaign. This is how I'm funding Stand for Love Tour. I'm trying to come to a city to bring love and light and conversations just like this so that we can build empathy for one another. It is in response to the Baby and Boosie, and who have such huge platforms that impact young hearts all over the world. We need more of us standing up and saying, no, forget all of that. It's about our experience. It's about love. It's about acceptance. It's about empathy. And the more of us that do that, and I think we can learn a lot from Gen Z. Like you said, they're showing up. Lil Nas did not ask for anybody's permission. And baby, he's living it. Oh, the one thing I wanted to say, and I wrote this down, is we need to support more of our own. There's so many gay artists, gay comedians, gay rappers, gay speakers. Stop bringing people in who don't live the experience to speak on your platforms. I'm here. David's here. Hope's here. Sampson's here. Hire the gay comedian. Hire the gay DJ. Every event I have all around the country, I want the whole space to be queered up. I just had Spinelli in Miami. He's a wonderful queer DJ. Like, hire queer people. Let's support our own. And that's my closing point. Please follow everybody.
And make sure y'all go on Amazon Prime and watch Love the One You're With. It's a film that I wrote and produced. Y'all know for the folks who don't know, I've been doing it for years, writing and producing comedy tours. I hire trans folks. I hire queer folks. I hire women, and I pay them union rates out my pocket from the money.
Listen, it's out my pocket for me, okay?
My pocket, okay? And so please support. And it's, again, some folks may not have agreed with some of the stuff that I said, but know that when I do my comedy, it's funny, first of all.
It is.
And secondly, it comes from the heart. And so there's something there for everybody. You'll feel right at home listening to my comedy. So come over and support good Black queer comedy content. And know that I'm always educating myself. I'm always listening. I have my approach, but it comes from an honest place. And because I do care about our community and I like doing great work. And so, come over, and when you support me, yes, you're supporting something that I'm leading, but you're also supporting many other Black and queer LGBTQ people who have overcome whatever to achieve whatever dream they're making happen. So, thanks for your support. So again, Love the One You're With on Amazon Prime.
Got it. And David, do you have anything you want anybody to be paying attention to?
Of course I do. Thanks for the invitation. Today on National Coming Out Day, I want people to consider that words matter. And I would be okay with coming out if everybody had to do it. But because that's a tool of white supremacy, I want us to shift to inviting in. So I encourage everyone to go to nvjc.org, download our Inviting In Toolkit, which names the ways that white supremacy works in this regard, and tries to shift us to a space where we can all increase our competence and compassion to acknowledge that society tells us there's something we all should feel shame around that we shouldn't. So I hope that you celebrate that day by downloading that and using that resource.
Absolutely. Well, happy Inviting In Day.
Boom.
Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And just be happy, y'all. I love y'all. I thank y'all. And we will be back again. Good night. And may God's blessings and the spirit of the universe be with you, and love be your comfort on tonight. God bless you.
All right. Good night, y'all.
Let's get free.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, y'all. Let's get free.